Welcome to Decode, a podcast that delves into the complex world of K-12 computer science education, highlighting the significance of storytelling in comprehending educational data.
Hi, Leigh Ann.
Hey, Stanley, how are you?
Yeah, welcome. Doing great. And to everyone else, welcome to the Decode podcast. I'm Stanley Bucheski, CEO of PyTop. We use STEM and inquiry-based learning to ignite the spark of passion for learning job skills and and show students how they can see the relevance of critical core topics and concepts that they otherwise find very boring. So, as you know by now, if you've been listening to Decode, our goal is to explore why there has been such a disparity in race and gender participation in technology education and to find some solutions. So, if you thought it was a hot topic that needed addressing today, please meet Leigh Ann Delyser, who saw and began tackling this problem nearly 2 decades ago or more. She is the director of the Center for Education Research and Innovation at SRI. Congrats, by the way, on the new position.
Thank you.
And she was the founder of an advocacy organization called CS for All and a former computer science teacher.
Absolutely. I spent almost a decade in computer science classrooms teaching high school and college computer science across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't say this before, but we are doing a mini series called The Icons of Education. And we are kicking this off with you. I think no more appropriate way to do this because, it's for me, I just like, I'm a newbie, but you are the icon in this area of equity and CS. And I know you're very, very humble and maybe don't appreciate that term, but it's exciting for me to have this conversation with you because for me, I've really been, I've been working in education for 20 years on the business side. I haven't been a classroom teacher, although I've been in a lot of classrooms with students and kind of had the opportunity to do some co-teaching and having some fun and presentations with students. In fact, I did some just last week in Mississippi. But for me, it's kind of a new topic of as we started bringing our solutions into classrooms and helping kids get excited, I started talking with superintendents and hearing this word equity in CS and just wondering what is that and why is this an issue? And then I started looking at some of the data and just the disparity in participation. And then, of course, I started asking the question, why? And everybody had a different answer and they were all valid. And they're different answers that are, different answers to the problem and solution. And they varied based on location, demographics, rural versus urban versus suburban, and affluent Title I schools, somewhere in the middle. All very different, but so I do want to talk about SRI and what you're doing there in a moment, but also want to go back to CS for All and kind of what your thinking was and what you saw when you were founder of that organization, and kind of what was the problem you were trying to solve?
Yeah, thank you, Stanley. First, thank you for the generous words calling me an icon. I think, if anything, my journey has been accelerated by an amazing set of partners, community, and parallel work from this ecosystem that has really been driving CS education. When I was a high school teacher, it was the AP computer science community that I got involved with because I taught AP computer science. So that listserv, that's a little hint to you of how long ago it was. That listserv was my life.
I haven't heard that one in a while.
Yeah, I was the only computer science teacher in the district, let alone my school. And everything I did as a new computer science and new-ish teacher, I was looking for validation that this was the right way to teach something, that it was rigorous enough to help prepare kids for this college level exam that we were working on, that it was interesting and creative and connected and made the students feel excited. Um, Way back then, I was even teaching them AI. My favorite introduction to algorithms was teaching a computer to play blackjack through a Bayesian approach where they just play it over and over and over again and update like whether or not they should hit or stay based on how much they won or lost, right? And so I always was this like looking for community around me, especially as a teacher and then as a college professor and researcher, really trying to understand how that community responds to the landscape, right? I was on the board of directors for CSTA a long time ago and had just
Computer
started
Science
graduate school
Teachers
and was kind of,
Association, for those who aren't aware.
yes, the Computer Science
Another,
Teachers Association,
another
who's
big
now,
advocacy
if you are
organization.
a computer science teacher, you should absolutely go and join. And no matter what, if you believe in computer science education, I would encourage anyone in the ecosystem to sign up as a CSTA Plus member. I'm not a teacher in a classroom anymore, but my annual dues help support the amazing ecosystem that CSTA is and manages and curates. And I would encourage everyone to go and join and be a part of that community. Um,
And
Even
we
if
have
you're
we
just
have
part of
aligned
it.
all of our curriculum to the CSTA standards as
Yeah,
well, which
absolutely.
is a
So
great set of standards and and very relevant actually to all of the core topics that are being taught in schools that are, where all those standardized tests are associated. So we've actually done crosswalks for CSTA standards to all of the core standards, because everything you're learning in computer science, or everything you taught, it's relevant. It's relevant to all the core topics. And actually, that's what I get excited about personally. Is, you're talking about um, all of these skills in the community, and really computer science touches everything. And when you can use something that's so hands-on and fun and engaging, it sort of makes those core topics that everyone thinks is so boring. Like Mike, I know you have a sixth grader, I have an eighth grader, and every day, well, so today was actually the first day of school. So he walked in there and I said, "Are you excited?" And he said, "No, I'm not." And he's just not getting the relevance. And when we can teach the relevance with something exciting, like blackjack, right? Got to get them start them early on gambling, right?
but it was something they could play and do physically outside of the computer and then watch the computer learn, right? Like that was really cool to them. And I think what you're talking about is, exactly what got me started on this journey of systems change, that has led to all the work I've done at CS for All, and now the continuing and expansive work I'm hoping to do at SRI. I'm only a month in, so,
Mhm.
got to have a
Can
little
you
runway here.
can you say what
But
that is, though? I mean, systems change is a very general phrase, but what do you mean when you say systems change as it pertains to education, and what system and why does it need to be changed?
yeah, so let's go back to your example of standards. And I am right with you there as a standards wonk. So right around 2008, when I went to Carnegie Mellon, first as a faculty member, and then uh, got enrolled as a graduate student in their School of Computer Science, I was really thinking about what guides the community in terms of the computer science that we're implementing. And for myself, as I mentioned, I was looking for ways to combine this notion of play and fun and rigor. Like, what is it that I should be teaching in the AP course, which has a very clearly, denoted list of things you should teach as an advanced placement course, and how the community was really trying to think about computer science education on the ground. And together with some partners from CMU, from the ACM, from the CSTA, we actually took the CSTA standards and crosswalked them to all 50 states, math, science, technology, engineering. Like, I read them all. Like, this is the graduate student nerd, Leigh Ann. I read all 50 state standards and mapped them back to the CSTA standards. And that became that report called Running on Empty, the Failure to Teach Computer Science in the Digital Age. And it was published by ACM, and you can still find it online. And that report really helped crystallize a movement around standards, not as a restricting or limiting factor for some standardized test, right? But instead as a like generative anchor, which is how I love to think of standards. It's where you start, and then you generate this excitement. What Diane Levitt talks about when she talks about rigor and joy being the intersection of computer science education. And so I really think about systems as there are these functions of the system, and standards being one of them, that we have to perceive for their role. Like, what is it they're supposed to do? How does the community use them? Are they actually pervading the system? And then at CS
so I've got a couple
we
questions
actually
on this, because
have a curriculum portal where we align the curriculum from organizations like PyTop, or I should say where they align the curriculum from organizations like PyTop to the K-12 CS framework as a way for teachers to get visibility into that alignment and make sure that they are covering not just the standards that come with any one set of curriculum, but the full set of standards that they might have to borrow from different curricula in order to achieve. So as a high school math teacher, I can tell you, I pulled things from like 5 different places to make my full geometry course. It wasn't one textbook or resource. And I think computer science teachers are doing the same thing. They're borrowing bits and pieces and using the standards as a roadmap for how they get to that completeness. And for organizations like CS for All and the work that I had done there for systems change, how do we perceive the landscape of what curriculum is available and communicate to folks like you? Oh, we have this real gap around cybersecurity. How do we encourage and activate the larger ecosystem of curriculum providers to provide the things missing from that whole set? And I think it's that combination that's how my brain works.
So I like everything you're saying. The thing that I struggle with, though, that I've been seeing recently is a few questions around standardized testing, right? So there is no, well, maybe you could say the AP test, I guess, is a test that's out there for these standards. But for the CSTA standards, there's no standardized test that's really given. But then you compare that to all the core topics like math, English, social studies, science. There are standardized tests, and this whole topic of teaching to the test, et cetera, is relevant in the sense that, does a teacher care about the standards, or how much do they care about the standards if there's no test associated with it? And I have one more question, but when you look at the standards today for computer science, and you have all of these, the reason we've been doing the crosswalk to the core topics is because they're core topics for a reason, for starters. But we've just done, as an education community, we've done a horrible job of showing students the relevance of topics that we think are critical. So my son comes home and says school was boring. It's because we haven't really done the good job of showing why you're ever going to need to know this, because they really think I'm never going to need to know this. So I think computer science, STEM, inquiry-based learning, we can create that spark by showing them the relevance, and then showing them not only the relevance, but if I learn how to do this and this, they are a set of job skills that go up to here, and I can get this cool job by doing this, but we don't
There's
really
a
make
lot
that
of
connection.
momentum in not just education, but policy right now for job skills, right? We're seeing this come around. It's the new orientation from what was soft skills. We're seeing multiple states, I think at least 10 now, have this idea of a profile of a graduate, which is this round perspective, not just like you've done this many courses or you have this many Carnegie units, but like you're able to problem solve, you're able to communicate, right? And what I think, not just computer science, but STEM education and education in general, like we're on this tipping point where we're starting, the pendulum is swinging back from these like micro measurement of individual learning primary factors, right? Can you solve a two-step equation? And it's swinging back to, can we take and combine these things in meaningful ways and work with other humans to do things?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so a couple of things are happening as well. There's this focus on job skills, and I love it because we had this. I wish I could find the study, or maybe it was a series of things, but basically we had some study that came out mid last century that said, or late last century that said, people with a college degree are more successful. Therefore, if you get a college degree, you're going to be successful. And the causal link was not there. And it was the beginning of a dual mandate given to schools that said, prepare your kids for the workforce, but also prepare them for college. And all we ended up doing, it was a dual mandate that was impossible to meet. So we focused on preparing kids for college, and not everybody's going to college. And in fact, lots of people are now going to college, spending 4 years out of the workforce, accruing a ton of debt, and then still not prepared for a job. And we eviscerated our apprentice programs. And so I love what you said, the pendulum that was swinging back, and we're saying, why there are so many jobs that are high quality, high paying, that we can prepare our kids for right out of school. So it's exciting to see this happening. And so I want to ask you my second question, what you think about this. So I want to talk about banning cell phones. I want to talk about use of AI and kind of equity. But
let's kind of pull these two things together.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pull together this notion of job skills and career readiness and all of the things that are happening with this notion of equity and systems reform and a little scratcher of AI on the side. How's that?
Yeah. Well, that's good. Let me ask you the question about AI, because one of the presentations I gave recently was talking about kind of the power of AI. And right now, and it's relevant to standardized testing and job skills, right? Right now, AI can ace any standardized test. And it's a technology tool. So why are you testing? Why are you giving me this test then if it can ace the test? What should we be testing our kids on? Should we be testing our kids? And all of that, I think, it rolls up to job skills. So you want to make the connection. I think that's how it's relevant, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, well, when you think about job skills and when you think about employability skills, when you think about things that are valued by employers, all of it comes around to this notion is, what is the additive value that you have as a human resource for whatever company, right? Or nonprofit, or right, public policy or government, like wherever is your workspace, community and civic engagement, right? Whatever you denote as that space that you are working in, whether it be a paid job, a volunteer, or civic engagement, you add something, right? And so when we talk about job skills, we're talking about how to have you add the most as a human. And so when we go back to this notion that our assessments are not actually measuring what you add, if you go back 40, 50 years, what you added was those individual pieces of knowledge. because you were taking something from X, adding that knowledge and moving it to Y, whether it be a report, whether it be an idea, whether it be a strategy or a plan, whether it be a financial spreadsheet. Like, you took something, you applied something from your expertise, right? And you moved it along. In today's world, the application of that expertise is not so siloed as our education is anymore. You're not doing one thing, except maybe if you're an accountant and doing people's taxes, right? And even then, there's a whole wraparound that gets involved in that.
Yeah.
And so what we're really
my
seeing...
accountant is also my therapist, actually. So
yeah, what we're really seeing is this emergence of people as multidisciplinary experts. And yes, the computer can look up for me faster than I can learn facts and figures and things. But here at SRI, I am the co-director of the Center for Education Research and Innovation. And we just did this exercise as I was trying to get to know the staff in the center around, what does innovation mean to you? And innovation isn't always coming up with something from a blank page. Sometimes it's taking things from different spaces and putting them together. And although AI can do any one of those individual things, it's the human that combines them for something new, which is the new value add, right? Now you're no longer taking this like input, applying one skill and moving it to an output as that human resource. You're taking input from multiple domains, multiple learnings, interactions with people, client perspectives, data, especially data in every role. Doing synthesis and moving whatever the goal is of that participation forward.
So what does that look like in today's world relevant to AI, right? Because AI is really good at memorizing stuff. So we don't need to memorize stuff anymore. It's very good at repetitive tasks. And it's still, there's this fear of AI, lots of areas of it, but it's really, again, it's one more technology tool. A shovel is a technology tool. We learn to use that instead of our hands to dig a hole or something like that. So if we look at it that way, so now there's certain things I don't have to do, or the accountant doesn't have to do on their job. What does it free us up to do?
But you're talking about it from the end of the perspective, and you're also talking about it with myself. You and I came up in an education system that valued the accumulation of these facts and knowledge, right? And the math teacher in me is going to bring around an analogy. Do you remember? I think when I first started teaching, it was the calculator wars. Should you put a calculator in a classroom? Do kids really need to learn their multiplication tables or not, right? And what we learned when we leaned too hard into the technology in those fundamental primary years is that students missed out on developing number sense. This feeling of how numbers fit together, how they combine and recombine, right? And that's really super important, especially right now in this modern world where data and statistics are rising above calculus as an important fundamental mathematics approach for all. If you go to business school right now, you're getting a data science degree, basically. And so we know that, yes, on the professional end, AI is going to be one of the tools in the professional's toolbox and scaffold a lot of time-intensive work for them. But on the learning end, we need to build the sense, right? We need to build a history sense and a communication and English language arts sense, right? And we need to build a mathematics sense, not just number sense, but overall mathematics sense, a science sense, because it's going to be those things that allow us to take the pieces that AI feeds us and understand how they can fit together to solve a problem, whether it be a financial problem, a product problem, a community problem, a government, like whatever the problem is we're working on, because somebody is trying to do something in jobs or careers or spaces, we're going to have to like use those senses in order to put together an output that's going to make a change.
So when you think about being an employer and hiring people, what are the skills today in the context of AI? What are the skills that you're looking for and qualities and that employers in general you think are looking for?
So
More
first,
in
the
a more concrete way,
technology.
right? Because what you're talking about right now is like we need to teach kids a sense for these things. How does that translate to a job skill, and how are those job skills different today now that we have this technology?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it wasn't the best practice, but technology companies for a long time have been known to do these cognitive interviews, right? Where they give you a problem and they ask you like on a whiteboard to write code or to talk about how they'd
We did
apply a
those so
particular
much.
data
I
structure.
did that when I had when I was doing my MBA, and
Yeah.
it was a
And
consulting interview.
what they're looking for isn't a perfect syntactical correct answer. They're looking for your thinking. And technology is changing so fast that there isn't a perfect answer to how would you use AI to solve this one problem, right? Instead, what I would be looking for if I were hiring would be, how do I think about the problem? How do I understand or learn about the tools in the ecosystem? Because there's always a new tool, right? You constantly have to be a learner. What is the tool? What are our risks? What does it do well? How does it complement myself or something else that we already have in-house, right? And then how do I put those things together? How do I understand the application of? And this is why that kind of sense comes in really handy. If I'm trying to build a communications plan, and it's my job to get a message out on social media, there's a ton of tools for that. So how would I, as a professional, understand the tools that are available, the trade-offs that exist, how they're going to make my work easier or harder, and stay current for what the next thing is? And I think that the reasoning behind it is more important than I want someone who's used GPT, I need prompt engineering skills for XYZ. Those things become secondary to actually understanding the shape of how the tools fit together.
Well, it seems like being able to use those tools effectively represents the skill set that you're looking for, right?
Yeah, and in computer science education, we do a lot of great work for students in that space, right? Manipulatives, all the kinds of little robotics. They're asking to take a technology which has limitations, apply it in the world in some way. I remember I had a robotics club and I had a senior project from a team that built a golf playing robot. And the golf ball was too heavy, so we ended up with, ping pong balls. And we were a high school classroom, so it's like we scavenged materials from anywhere. And so they were literally using a plastic spoon from the cafeteria as their golf club, right? And it's that kind of creative thinking with the constraints of the environment that computer science really gives kids every day in preparation for these workforce skills that you're talking about.
And you only get that. That's why I love that type of project, or project-based learning, inquiry-based learning. It's because until you go through that exercise as a person, it's hard to realize that your whole environment is a resource, and that, oh wait, a spoon can actually be used for something else. And what do I need? What else could serve that need? And those exercises are just incredibly valuable, I think, and we miss those in just the rote memorization sort of things. Let me shift gears a second because I'm a topic du jour is banning cell phones, and 3 states have actually passed legislation banning cell phones. Um, and I don't think it's a good idea. And I get the one perspective of it, that it's just become a distraction. But I think that the cell phone is the most powerful learning tool in the history of the world. And I really struggle with the idea of banning it in our education institutions. And I feel very strongly that we have to meet kids where they are. And I really do feel the plight of teachers over the past 15 years, right? So just to set the stage, and I'm happy if you strongly disagree with me or agree with me, either way, because I just want to explore this and help get to an answer around it. But set the stage of the plight of the teacher has been, became a teacher, and I've started doing all my lesson plans and planning for the year, and then suddenly Google Classroom came along, and cheap Chromebooks came along, and after decades of very slow and limited adoption of technology, it was a giant wave. And then all these other products and services became possible and usable because you had kind of a technology platform. And so that lesson plan that you did was, I mean, you just had to, every single year for a teacher, it was some new professional development course on some new technology platform that you have to use and implement. And then suddenly you're like just trying to catch some breath, and then COVID hits. Now you got to learn to teach remotely and use Zoom and all of the different sort of classroom management challenges. And now we've got this giant wave of AI. And so, yeah, I just want to ban cell phones in the classroom because all my kids are doing that. But, I just did a presentation last week to a bunch of different schools and students in Tupelo, Mississippi. And I opened up live on the screen my own Snapchat and started doing prompting with Snapchat's AI bot. And that was pretty cool for kids, right? There's actually stuff that you can do. Now, Snapchat's AI bot is not the same level as ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of the others, but isn't there a way that we can actually leverage this powerful education technology tool, the cell phone, in classrooms without having to say, no, not allowed?
So, yeah, first, Stanley, I want to say you paint a pretty gloomy picture of the teaching environment and workforce, and like and I have to say, one of the things that I love about getting a chance to work with teachers all over the country and hearing what they're doing is that there's a lot of them out there who are still very joyful about the work, and that yes, there is a constant drumbeat of the new thing, but that's not new to education, right? That's been happening since the 40s. And so, first of all, I want to shout out to all of those teachers who are showing up joyfully to work every day, who find, chicken soup for their soul in that kid that comes in the classroom excited because they got it, right? Or when they get 100 on their math quiz, or even when they just get something right on a practice activity, or they make something work in the classroom. And there's a lot of joy in education. And there's a lot of teachers out there who feel like you do, that cell phones and everything should be part of the mix of what makes up a classroom environment. I'm going to flip your question on its head, though, because you started mentioning equity a little bit at the beginning of this conversation. And I want to ask you a question. How can you use a cell phone in a classroom as a teaching tool if not everybody has one?
Well, obviously, you can't if not everybody has one. The example I gave was, so the interesting thing is that you have a web. So as a result of COVID, we actually got one-to-one with computers.
So if we have these computational devices, whether they be computers, many schools also have roving carts of iPads or tablets, which have many of the same functionality as student-owned cell phones. It's not a personal device. And I get where you're coming from, that there's something really meaningful for a kid to be on their own device while they're learning, right? And for a teacher to be able to have this personal device that is also like fluid between their teaching and the fluency they have with it. But I think whether banning is at the state level is the right policy decision or not, I'm really thinking about, as we're thinking about the architecture of a classroom, the learning space of a classroom, the things you're talking about that cell phones can bring into the space, especially in terms of being portable, right? You can pick it up and walk it around, take pictures of things. Many of the
I don't know.
apps.
I'm contemplating your question, and I just don't think I've ever met a kid that doesn't have a cell phone.
Oh, I've met a ton of them. My daughter doesn't have one yet.
Well, I mean, that's a parent choice.
But then if right, but if it becomes a teaching tool in her classroom where she's supposed to have one in order to do the activity. But there's a lot of communities where kids don't have their own personal cell phone until much later in their academic journey. And even if it's just one, what does that mean?
The answer is still not okay. If there's one that doesn't have one, just no one can have one. I mean, how
but then what is the role that the cell phone plays in the classroom? And can that role be
I don't
satisfied?
know what the role necessarily is, but what I do know is that kids are on Snapchat all the time. They trust it. Like that's their way of communicating. And there was something that one of my colleagues said recently, which is that he has a teenage daughter, as I have two teenage daughters as well. And he said, there's certain things that my daughter knows that I just don't understand. And part of that is how they are tied to their cell phone. They grew up with devices in their hands. So I just know that is a way that they connect. And so I would go about it a bit of a different way and just say that we have to meet them where they are. And if someone doesn't have a device, there's maybe a different solution to that, rather than saying we're just going to ban these, or for equity purposes.
And I'm not saying banning them for equity purposes is
the everybody.
Yeah. First of all, I love that we're not just like agreeing with each other in this whole podcast. It's awesome.
Good.
I wouldn't say banning them for equity purposes is the line I'm drawing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm asking, because you're making an argument that cell phones should be fundamental to the classroom, right? Because whether or not a state or a school or a teacher bans their use in the classroom, you're making an argument that ban is wrong because fundamentally they can be a teaching tool.
Well, I'm saying something slightly different, which is that cell phones are fundamentally a part of students' lives. Whether or not there are certain cases where parents choose to ban them themselves, or whether there's an affordability issue.
And I'm not disputing that. I'm making an argument like, what does a cell phone have that is different from what we can provide as a school or a district or a teacher in that learning environment? And I hear from you advocacy for particular apps like Snapchat, right? That can be used as a teaching tool either by the teacher or the student. First of all, I think there's a whole pile of problems around safety and privacy and security and
100%.
like, right? So
I popped my Snapchat open up on the big screen for everybody to see, and I got a whole bunch of invites that I don't want to accept. I mean, yeah,
Right? It's, while I
safety
was a
is a,
teacher, Facebook had just come out. I refused to friend any of my students, even though they tried to, on Facebook, right? I told them all they could follow me on Twitter because that was my professional account where I tweeted about like the lesson I was doing or the robotics club or something. But Facebook was for my family. And even to this day, I'm very careful about how I curate my Facebook friends. But, I think as we're thinking about the potential, like what you're talking about is how to build, again, back to that real world problem solving and learning that we started talking about. How do we bring the world into the classroom?
yeah. So I kind of look at it, I look at it slightly differently. And I love that we're having this conversation, and because I do recognize that there are impediments to some of this, but
learnings. We
what's
should
that?
talk to kids about the risk of all of these platforms and what
Well,
does it mean to violate their terms of service or to have personal accounts viewable to everyone, right? And especially in school-based environments for underage youth, making sure we're using tools and technology that are COPA compliant, right? That really set the students up for safe interactions.
yeah, I get all of that, but when we talk about equity and access, the reality is that this is for a lot of low income students, it's the one connection to technology that they have. It's the one connection to AI that they have. And if you take that away, they don't have that anymore. And if you thought that sort of the disparity, the gap widened significantly when it came to access to internet and access to computing at home. Watch out when it comes to access to AI, and I mean that gap could be massively compounded. So,
and especially for youth, I think the important conversation we have to have as a global community is for our children, AI for what? Right? What is it that we want to risk bringing what is a very fledgling and formative technology into their lives and into their world? Why? Right? And AI has so many positive benefits, right? There's so many learning technologies. There's so many things around entertainment and the curation of entertainment for youth. But at the same time, there's so many challenges with it as well. You made a comment about a young girl who sees like she knows so many things from Snapchat, and students trust Snapchat. And should they? Should we
do though.
double down? But should we double down on that platform as expert? So there's a lot of, and there's no right answer.
Well, I know, and the only way we're going to get to answers is having discussions like this. But the reality is, they do, and if
And maybe we
don't
should show
engage
them
at
other
that level,
platforms too.
well, right. But if we don't engage with them on it, and we just say no, then they're gonna explore it on their own. I mean, if I tell my son you can't watch this or do this, I mean, there's certain things that he's just going to go do it at his friend's house where he is allowed. And so, do I want to
But at the
engage
same
with him
time,
directly and be a guide? And it's the same thing for, being in school. So I think we've got to find, ways to engage with these platforms and instead of just saying, oh, it's a nuisance, it's a distraction. I mean, digital citizenship. We've been talking about digital citizenship for a long time. It's all related and relevant.
almost never is the answer full yes or full no, right? It's somewhere in the middle. And so it's not a full out ban, but it's also not like this is the panacea, right? It's in the middle. And we have to figure out a way as you and I, who are voices in this space, for the other people who are leading policy reform or even just advocates or influencers for education, to help teachers find the middle ground, to help them ask the question of what is the value this will add to my classroom? What is the learning this will support, which is what you're arguing for?
Yeah, I love
and
that.
How do we but how do we balance that with the risks? How do we make transparent all the things we know about this, we the teachers, for students as they get a chance to experience it, right? So it's how do we help teachers find the middle ground? Not everything is the answer and not everything needs to be banned, but it has to have a value, an instructional purpose value. And how does that fit with each teacher's individual style in a classroom, right? So I think some teachers might be comfortable doing that and others may not. And we have to help support them in that journey to find their own teacher voice. You.
And I would just be angry if I were a teacher in one of those states where a legislator took that out of my hands to decide. And,
and there might be a teacher next door who is
thankful
that they don't have to have the argument with parents every day, right?
Yeah.
Like this amazing education system is full of different opinions, right? And we all hold these lovely, strong opinions about what's right. And I think conversations like this one are the best way for us to help model for administrators, for teachers, how to weigh those options with their colleagues and make those decisions and curate curriculum and lesson plans and activities that support learning, keeping that at the forefront while also being this would be really cool. Or it might be something that powers motivation and engagement, but at the same time has risks for engagement as students feel their book bag buzzing on the back of their chair, even if the phone is put away.
Yeah. Well, right? This conversation really epitomizes the purpose of this podcast, which is we're trying to unlearn some things that we thought were true by having candid conversations. So thank you for that. And I want to point out one thing also, which little thing that I learned from you when I saw you at the ASU GSB conference, which was that Area Finger was one of your former students. So I'm going to make the connection here, which is that I am Reid Hoffman's pipeline. So at ASU GSV, I interviewed Pat Young-Pradit from TeachAI or Code.org. And so you can see that podcast. And immediately after, he went on to the main stage with Reid Hoffman and Area Finger for the Possible podcast. So I'm pretty sure that now we've had our podcast, that you're going to be next on the Possible podcast. And apparently you have a connection there. So good luck with that. But very cool that there's that connection, that you had her as a student when you were a CS teacher.
She did that AI teacher computer play blackjack assignment with me.
That is class. So cool.
And to be clear, her wild success is a combination of her own drive and enthusiasm and curiosity about the world, and also this amazing set of educational learning experiences and things that she's done in her life. She founded, and I don't think she founded, but she ran DoSomething.org for a while. She's just done so many amazing things, and I'm just proud to have even been this tiny little speck on her journey to where she is.
I think that's wonderful. Well, So we talked about some problems and maybe some solutions. Maybe just to wrap up here, I love that you pulled out kind of the joy that teachers bring to the classroom. Can you maybe give us a message of positivity or something that, as you look at kind of where we're going with equity in CS or AI or technology, kind of the positive spin on how you think, how you see things playing out.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of connect it a little bit to what I'm doing now. So here at SRI, the Center for Education Research and Innovation is leading several major projects, and I myself am joining the Includes Network, which is an NSF-funded network for all of the broadening participation in STEM
You mentioned
alliances and projects.
I just have to say really quickly, yeah. I had to look it up because I thought it was a typo. NSF Includes is inclusion. It stands for inclusion across the nation of communities of learners of underrepresented discoverers in engineering and science. So yeah, it definitely needed an acronym. So
yeah, and it encompasses a lot of the work I've done in the past in computer science education, but all of these amazing projects and partners are working towards systems reform and systems change, focused on different populations within the country who often lack systemic access to computer science or have barriers in their way. There's over 100 resources on the site of things you can take and use right away. You can find us at includesnetwork.org. But what makes me excited and joyful is here at the center, this notion that research and innovation go hand in hand. I'm watching some of my colleagues make data science accessible. I'm watching some of my colleagues provide technical assistance through the IES-funded Regional Education Laboratory in Appalachia, work with families all through those communities to think about what high-quality education means for all kids, and collectively learn things that improves educational outcomes, right? There's work here going on college and career pathways. There's a recent report that came out that might be really interesting for some of your listeners for how educators in schools select products. You can go to learntoscale.org and find out about some of that work. And so what makes me joyful is that every single day, we haven't just kind of thrown our hands up and go, but we're thinking and innovating and finding new approaches and solutions that are informed by educators and in partnership with school leaders in order to make education not only better for students, but easier to implement. And that combination, to me, is exciting and hopefully inspiring.
Thanks for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We will see you next time on Decode.